Cape Province, because the National Assembly is now debating the phased reopening of schools by the Department of Basic Education. We take you live to Parliament now.
Whilst other grades had not yet reopening during the lockdown, learning continued under the auspices of parental guidance, and homeschooling has become prominent in our country since the beginning of this pandemic. Turning to the aspect of multi-pronged approach to learning, honorable members, countries around the world are wrestling over how to reopen their schools. This pandemic led to a closure of 60% of schools across 186 countries and forced 1.5 billion learners to stay at home. As this country, considering that like any other country was affected by COVID-19 pandemic, we had to take the steps in preventing the spread by closing schools and reopening schools when correct measures had been put in place. These measures include the review of the school calendar, coming up with risk-adjusted approach while putting appropriate directives to be followed by all involved. With regards to examinations and assessment, the preparation considering grade L to grade 11 focus on school-based assessment as outlined in revised annual teaching plans. It is envisaged that all assessments relating to these grades will be concluded by the 15th of December in 2020. Learners will be issued with the school reports on the 15th of December in 2020. So to ensure that the 2020 National Senior Certificate November examination conclude in 15 November 2020, it is proposed that the examination commences on the 5th of November in 2020. In support of school feeding scheme and social support for learners, our learners cannot be subjected to hunger. Therefore, the department took a responsibility to ensure that the National School Nutrition Program provision is arranged for learners who are in need on staggered time frame arrangement to comply with social distancing. On the account of basic services and strengthening of capability to deliver infrastructure, the infrastructure has been negatively impacted by the pandemic. As I ponder on this aspect, the expression of liberation struggle leader Amika Cabral comes to the fore, as he once said, and I quote, "You tell no lies, no difficulties, and claim no easy victories." And I close quote. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President.
As I call on the Honorable Machesi, Honorable Ntombela will take over. Honorable Machesi.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Speaker, I would like to express my gratitude to all the frontline workers and to those who have lost their loved one. We say, lalani ngenxeba kwaye abonke abasiba basulekileyo mabalale ngoxolo. Jwalo ka re keteka kgwedi ya basadi, let's reflect on this. 67% of basic income grant has been paid out to men, despite the fact that out of 3 million people who lost jobs due to COVID-19, 2 million women were women, yet this government claims to empower women. This is a constitutional infringement. Honorable Chair, COVID-19 pandemic was a chance for this government to bridge the divide. They failed in the past 27 years, and they are failing even now. Closing of schools after a hard lockdown was not based on putting the future of our learners as priority. It was purely political, with no scientific evidence, and blatantly ignoring WHO, which endorsed medical evidence that transmission of virus of children is low, and therefore this fact must influence specific reasons in relation and decisions in relation to school reopening. We all agree that life is vital and we must do everything that we can to protect all lives. Equally so, we cannot stand by and watch the future of our children being trampled upon and discarded by unions and indecisiveness of this government and lack of implementation. When the government decided that to close schools, the minister said, learners will collect food from school. Is it happening? No. She further said school must send books to learners. Is it happening? No. She then said all elderly teachers with severe comorbidities are going to be replaced. Has it happened? A big no. Was there any funding for school to fight COVID-19? None. Instead, provinces had to finish with their stretched budget, and hence we are seeing resistance from a majority of teachers and learners who are reluctant to return to school because of years of lack of planning and implementation by this department, which has led to mistrust and lack of confidence in the department. And yet, this government wants you to believe that they have the learners' priorities in mind. If they had our children's future in mind, they have realized that there is no time in the post-apartheid era that is more urgent to address inequality related to basic water and sanitation infrastructure than at the present moment. They would have considered that there are children in this country, like Michael Komape, who died in a pit latrine at school, and therefore include basic education amongst entities who would benefit from the 500 billion rand rescue plan. Did they? No. If they had our children's future in mind when making decisions, they would have had 1 million children who are stunted in the center of their decision. Instead, they starved 9 million children during a month of COVID-19 lockdown, and millions continue to starve, setting us back in eradicating 27% stunting among children. Fortunately, the DA recognized that nutrition program should be in the center stage because the inability of households to feed children will worsen during the pandemic. And that is supported by coronavirus rapid mobile survey, which shows that hunger among children has doubled at the start of lockdown, with 1 in 7 children going hungry. Honorable Chair, not forgetting that on an ongoing crisis of learner dropouts, whereby 48% learners drop out of education yearly, and deliberate closing of schools will now exacerbate as more learners will not be going back to school. We cannot ignore that 78% of South African grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning. The start of dropout starts at the foundation phase. Instead, we have a government that is goal-orientated, focusing only on metric, and that is being myopic. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, there are about 10 to 20% of schools which remain closed, and there are no set timelines to prepare the schools for the return of teachers and learners. We are of the view as a Democratic Alliance that we should not implement school closure going forward because the price is too great to pay. But equally so, fighting this pandemic needs all hands on deck. Limiting infection and must be our utmost priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next person is the Honourable Mashabela from the EFF.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Our education system has been in a crisis for the past couple of decades, and there has been no clear commitment from successive governments to fix it. What the COVID-19 pandemic has clearly demonstrated in the basic education sector is a concerning lack of leadership and vision to restructure our education system to enable it to respond to the challenges of today. We have emphasized before that one of the first priorities an engaged state must tackle is the reconstruction of the education system in its entirety in the country, so that it's geared towards emancipatory ideals and able to service the reconstruction and development demands of the present and the future. The closure of schools due to COVID-19 and the rushed reopening thereafter exposes the depth of neglect our education system has been sunk to by the ANC. The Department of Basic Education has not been able to meet its own basic norms and standards for school infrastructure, and this has been the case for years. Towards the end of 2019, only 56% of schools in the country complied with minimum physical infrastructure standards. Only 76% of schools had running water, and 80% had adequately functioning sanitation. Only 67% of schools had sufficient classrooms, which means that they could accommodate 40 learners per classroom. The rest of the school were overcrowded. On top of this, thousands of teaching posts were left vacant, and there was a growing degree of teacher absenteeism because of teachers are getting old and sickly. COVID-19 struck us in the midst of this dysfunctionality in our education system. Returning back to school, Chairperson, will require sufficient classrooms in order for both teachers and learners to observe social distancing. We do not have these classrooms in our schools. Chairperson, returning back to school will require sufficient water and sanitation facilities for constant hand washing and safe ablution facilities. We do not have this in our schools, and the rapid provision of water tanks has been mired in corruption, leaving a number of schools still without water. Returning back to school requires motivated teachers who are fit and healthy. This department has exposed many teachers to sickness and death by not providing sufficient PPEs, by forcing them to work in congested classrooms and staff rooms. We know for a fact that most schools in townships and in rural areas are poorly equipped and do not have necessary leadership and resources to deal with COVID-19. They use overloaded transport services. All these are serious risk factors that the department has basically ignored. Knowing the kind of mess our education system has been in our 2019 election manifesto, we boldly argued there is a greater need to increase the use of information and communication technology for teaching and learning, with achieving universal coverage in computer literacy by 2024. We also argued that each learner must get a tablet loaded with all necessary study material, tutorials, and educational videos. Further, we stated that there must be one education system, one country, and that all students must fall under one school system, and all matric learners must write the same examinations. Independent examination board should be abolished. This would have resolved many of the problems we face today in relation to the opening of schools. The department is not ready. Our schools are yet not ready. We risk killing both our children and our teachers. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker on the platform is from the SF Plus, the Honourable Bishop.
Achtbare Deputy Speaker, toe die coronavirus sy oë in Suid-Afrika oopgemaak het hy die onderwysstelsel van 'n ontwikkelingsstaat gesien. Nie verlang nie, want toe sluit die onderwysstelsel. Laat my toe om net iets oor die ontwikkelingsstaat te sê. In die Hoër Onderwyskomitee is ek eenmaal deur die voorsitter, die agbare Mapolani, oor die kole gehaal toe ek na Suid-Afrika as 'n sosialistiese staat verwys het. Suid-Afrika is 'n ontwikkelingsstaat, iets heeltemal anders. Die agbare Mapolani is natuurlik korrek, want al die beleidsstukke van die regering word na 'n ontwikkelingsstaat verwys. Suid-Afrika jaag die voorbeeld na van Oos-Asiese state waar die staat 'n sentrale rol speel om te verseker dat die ekonomie aangewend word om maatskaplike doelwitte te bereik. 'n Beleggingsvriendelike omgewing word geskep waar multinasjonale maatskappye tot die ekonomie kan kom bydra, maar onder die streng voorwaardes dat plaaslike ekonomie deur plaaslike indiensneming en plaaslike grondstowwe bevoordeel word. In ruil daarvoor sal die staat 'n stabiele wetsgehoorsame omgewing en 'n toepaslik opgeleide werksmag skep. Die bevolking van ontwikkelingsstaat het dalk nie al die vryhede van sommige demokratiese lande nie. Maar dit is om te keer dat die korttermynbelange van of die besigheidselite of die werkersklas nie die professionele, toegewyde, versende, beplannende bureaukrasie van koers dwing. Dalk nie so baie vryheid nie, maar in ruil ekonomiese groei. Ek weet nie, maar dit moet die afwesigheid van 'n beleggingsvriendelike omgewing of 'n toegewyde bureaukrasie of ekonomiese groei wees, of ekonomiese beleid wat aan die privaat sektor voorskryf wie hulle in diens mag neem en deur wie hulle besit mag word, wat my verkeerdelik laat dink het, 'n ontwikkelingsstaat is maar net sosialisme onder 'n ander naam. Ek is die agbare Mapolani dankbaar dat hy my uitgehelp het. Terug na die onderwysstelsel. Voor die koms van COVID-19 het die staat die leiersels in basiese onderwys al sterker in sy hande geneem. Tuiskole is toegelaat omdat die wet dit bepaal het, maar voorwaardes het al strenger geword. Soos een rolspeler opgemerk het, hulle het besluit om tuiskole nie onwettig te maak nie, net onmoontlik. Die neiging was na groter skole, kleiner skole waar kinders na aan hulle blyplekke skool gegaan het, skoolgang moes sluit, sodat kinders liewer na groter, gesentraliseerde skole vervoer kon. Skole met 'n sterk tradisie en kulturele samehang was ook 'n teken. Registrasies is gesentraliseer, sodat die staat kan besluit wie na watter skool toe gaan, en dan sommer die skool dwing om die taalbeleid daarbey aan te pas. Onafhanklike skole was wettig, maar nie noodwendig welkom nie. Vereistes ten opsigte van fisiese fasiliteite is afgedwing op 'n vlak wat nie van openbare skole verwag is nie. Toe ek hoof van 'n onafhanklike skool was, is ons terreininspeksie eenmaal afgekeur omdat daar by sommige wasbakke nie seep was. Die naweek daarna is ek vir kurrikulumopleiding na openbare skool waar elke enkele toilet en krib in die seunsbadkamer verstop was. So is die staat se kloue al stewiger om die funksionele deel van die onderwyssektor geklem. Terwyl skole wat sedert die studenteopstande van 1976 slagvelde van 'n politieke magstryd was, nie weer tot funksionele status verhef kon word nie. Wat die bureaukrate kan beheer hulle, maar as dissipline verdwyn en daar geen kultuur van leer is nie, kan bureaukrasie dit nie skep. Met die Grendelstraat is letterlik duisende skole gevandaliseer. Dit gebeur wanneer gemeenskappe die skool nie as hulle eie beskou nie. Wat het met die Grendelstraat gebeur? Kleiner skole en onafhanklike skole kon vroeër heropen, want dit was vir hulle moontlik om sosiale afstand te handhaaf. Met toegewyde onderwysers en ouers is ontwrigting van die skooljaar tot die minimum beperk, en dat ons maar erken op die heel beste is hierdie jaar 'n onderwysslagveld. Tuiskole is as bondgenote ontdek. In die proses om skole te heropen is tuiskole vir kinders met onderliggende siektetoestande en ouers wat benoud voel.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, agbare Bischof. The date is on. The next speaker is the Honorable Sukers from the SCDP.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The ACDP welcomes the phased reopening of schools and the continuation of the academic year, because education is still the greatest equalizer and our children's best chance for a better future. We have to acknowledge the severe anxiety and strain COVID-19 had on parents, teachers, and children. Disputing interest of various groupings within the sector and the need for effective collaboration to advance the best interest of our children. I want to emphasize the interests of children should be paramount and nothing else must usurp that. Chair, we will look at this period in the years to come as a defining moment for education in South Africa. And there are many parents who are choosing not to send their children to school for this period or to homeschool their children. The DBE has a responsibility to ensure the rights of those parents and learners are respected. The challenges encountered by parents are that schools refuse parents the right for their children to learn from home. The lack of communication and long delays on processing applications for those who choose homeschooling is unacceptable. This has caused significant frustration and a tug of war between parents, schools, and advocacy groups. The ACDP want to re-emphasize that parents and guardians are the primary custodian in the education of their children and not the state. Should a parent opt to keep their children at home, then administratively schools should honor that right and not force parents to send their children. This phased reopening of schools allowed for the preparation and planning of a safe return to learning, but it also relieved pressure from an overcrowded schooling system that further deepened the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. The stark reality is, for some children, learning continued in the safe spaces of their homes. Vulnerable children was left to fend for themselves, and risks increased tremendously. The truth is that for many children in South Africa, school is their only safe space. This reality will be with us for a very long time until we build a stronger social network at a community level to safeguard at-risk children. Our children in vulnerable communities are the targets of predators in the form of gangsters, abusers, and hunger that drives them to risky behaviors such as begging. And this has significantly increased in this period. And we face the real danger of a higher school dropout rate. We have to develop a response between social services and the Department of Education to address school dropouts and the strict monitoring of school attendance or upkeep of academics for those receiving grants.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Thank you very much. The time is up.
House Chair, Steve Swart from the Chamber. Just on a point of order, House Chair, do you recognise me?
Yes, Honourable Steve.
I'm sure it wasn't the intention
Yes,
of...
the point of order, Honourable.
Just
Honourable
the interruptions
Swart.
just the interruptions while Ms. Sukkers was speaking by Mr. Nshai. I'm sure it was not intentional, but there were 3 interruptions. I just hope that you'll address that. And I did notice you gave a bit of extra time to my speaker, so thank you for that, but we need to address the interruptions. Again, I'm not saying it was intended. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Swart. Honourable members, we don't have a speaker from the UDM and ATM.
You do, House Chair.
Okay. Chayage Mtlegas.
Thank you very much.
Member from the UDM.
Thank you very much, House Chair and honourable members. We would like to take this opportunity to also extend our deepest condolences to the family of Honourable Mohammed, as well as the ANC and South Africans at large. We hope that his spirit will rest in peace. The United Democratic Movement, Sititina, Uhulumente squandered an opportunity once more when they took a decision to apply a phased-in approach to the reopening of schools. That was an opportunity for this government to use that time to try and prepare the basic education system for the return of schools, so that there would be, rather for the return and the reopening of schools, so that the children, when they had to return back to schools, they would do so in a safe environment. Unfortunately, as was the case and has always been the case with all the other issues that are related to COVID-19, that opportunity was squandered. In many of the schools, even in the Eastern Cape and especially the rural provinces, the basic education system has not put safety and precautionary measures in place to ensure that our children, when they go back to school, they go back to a safe environment. Many of the schools, there are quite a number of schools, not only in the Eastern Cape, but in Limpopo, where teachers still lack PPEs, basic PPEs. But the other issue, which is a problem for us, is that there has been no proper consultation between the various stakeholders when the government decided to review its decision to reopen schools. Different dates were announced without consulting all the important stakeholders, civil society, teacher unions, but in particular, I think the parents are an important stakeholder, including the SGBs, in developing a policy that would actually ensure that it has a buy-in from all the different stakeholders. The chop and change approach really confused South Africans. But what is also important and concerning to us is that at times teacher unions appeared as if they were intimidating, if you like, or even telling government what to do in some instances, even against the will of some of the parents. But the current system that is being used, what concerns us a great deal is that it worsens inequalities, because one would consider that when the schools were reopened, or when the decision to reopen and to reclose the schools at some point, it only affected mainly public schools. And those are learners from previously disadvantaged backgrounds at the main. And those who came from backgrounds that people have affluent communities rather, they weren't really affected because it was all systems go, and their learning has not been disrupted to a large extent, while the government still continues to dilly-dally on issues that contain and pertain to our children, the children of the poor and the previously disadvantaged. We are still calling on government to consider complaints that come from different teachers and different schools around the country, where they complain about PPEs, where they complain about not having water, even though water tanks were dispatched, because those water tanks, the contract management of those water tanks has been marred by corruption. You have schools that are complaining that sanitation in instances where toilets have been blocked, for example, they have not been working, they have not been addressed, even though those matters have been escalated.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Thank you very much, Honourable Member.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honourable Member from the ATM. No member from the ATM. I now call from them Honourable the Deputy Minister of Basic Education from the ANC.
Thank you. Thank you, House Chair. Greetings to you and all the honourable members in the House, as well as those who are connecting like me. And greetings to Minister of Basic Education, Ma'enzi Mutshega, the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, and the members. Chair, I want to join honourable members in the House by paying condolences to the family of Comrade Mohammed, who has been laid to rest today. And we also want to congratulate the women of South Africa for the role that they played in the emancipation of women and the total liberations of South Africans. I want to quote the former president of the African National Congress, Utata Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, when he said, "It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of a mine, that the child of a farm worker can become the president. It is what we make out of what we have, what are given, that separate one person from another." I close quote. Chairperson, it remains a calculated risk to reopen schools under the circumstances, yet to make sure that life is not compromised. New research from the Stellenbosch University academics is suggesting that without rigorous catching up, the skills of grade 12 graduates would be lower than in the no-pandemic scenario for a decade up to 2031. In contrast, if done right, the catch-up scenario takes the quality of graduates back to the no-pandemic trend by 2023. That's what the researchers are saying. My task, Chair, is to clarify all matters relating to the curriculum coverage, to mitigate the impact of the extended school closures due to lockdown. We have developed a framework for curriculum recovery as schools reopen gradually. Our singular focus is supporting the grade 12 learners, teaching the core competencies for grade R up to grade 11 in preparation for post-2020 learning and curriculum recovery. It must be noted that the lost teaching time will be recovered over 3 years, that is from 2020 to 2023. The framework for curriculum recovery revises the school calendar, reorganizes the curriculum through training for grades 1 up to 11, as well as the revision of coverage framework is being implemented in 2 phases. That is the revised annual teaching plans and the guidelines for teachers to address emerging challenges. At the core of phase 1 is the repackaging of content, concept, and skills for reduced teaching time, based assessment task, and the revised annual. This is the 80% timetabling that includes rotational and platooning. It also sets protocols on temporary school closure as part of the combating and management of the COVID-19 pandemic. Honorable Chair, in collaboration with the National Education Collaboration Trust, we are in the process of developing subject plans. The objective is to locate the subject planning process in the broader curriculum recovery strategy. We want to ensure that curriculum recovery is contextualized at a school level. In the main, we want to facilitate the multi-year curriculum recovery planning. In terms of the end of the year assessment for the general from grade R to grade 9, and the school-based assessment for the foundation phase, that is grade R to 3, will remain unchanged at 100%. The final mark for these grades will be calculated from the assessment completed in term 1, 3, and 4. The school-based assessment in grade 4 to 9 has been revised to count 80% of the final mark. The end of the year school-based test in grade 4, 80% of the final score. Unfortunately, reports will only be issued at the end of term 3 and term 4 based on summative and formative evidence. The final examination for grade 12, grade 10, and 11 will happen as follows. The final promotional examinations would be replaced with a formal ultimate class test, which is school-based.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
In the case of grade 11, Chair, the final class test can be limited to the elective subjects.
Honorable Deputy Minister, I wish I could give you some more time, but unfortunately, I am constrained by the rules of the House. Your time is up.
Honorable Ntombela.
Thank you, Chair, but I was told
Honorable Ntombela.
Honorable Chair.
There was a
Honorable
change.
Chair.
There's a change. Instead of the 5 minutes you see, Dr. Mohaule has 8 minutes. So she still has 2 minutes, 38 seconds. Thank you.
2 minutes, 38 seconds.
Yes.
You have been rescued, Deputy Minister. You have just been rescued. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's protected, my 2 minutes. So, Chair, I'm saying in the case of grade 11, the final class test can be limited to the elective subjects, and examinations are conducted only in the fundamental subjects, that is mathematics, the mathematical literacy, language of learning, that is English in some other instances, and home language. Chair, our assessment framework discourages standard tests or examinations, even at a district level. The overall idea is to reduce the scope of the final assessment for promotional purposes to align with the revised weighting of 80% on the SPA and 20% on final examination. I'm happy to announce that the matric class of 2020 will sit for their trial examination from September and ending no later than the first week of October. We'll conduct the largest ever combined national senior certificate examination for the class of 2020 from the 5th of November until the 15th of December 2020. The marking will commence from the 4th of January 2021 until the 22nd of January 2021. The ministerial announcement of the National Senior Certificate Examination for
IT, please assist by removing the chair from the screen.
Will only be announced on the 22nd by the Minister of February and the 23rd. Finally, let me take this opportunity to thank the members of this august House Department and thank.
Losing the deputy.
In closing, Chair, I don't know whether you are frozen or what, but I was saying, Ubabungogo have.
Yeah, we experiencing problems, Deputy Minister. But we have covered the core of what you wanted to say, I hope. Honorable Deputy Minister, are you through? Thank you very much. Honorable Chair, we go to the next speaker, the Honorable August from Good.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. With South African schools having reopened to a new normal yesterday, it is time
there's a bad background behind you, Honorable August.
Honorable Chairperson, it's not Honorable August.
Chair.
It's not Honorable August. Can they assist us with Honorable Njaisa? I don't think he's aware that his mic is on. He has to switch his mic off, or IT must help.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the final list that I have here is showing the Honorable August.
No, it is
but it's
Honorable.
Fine, Chair. Are we allowing in?
Yes, it's Honorable August.
Are we bringing in?
Yes, it's Honorable August.
Me?
It's Honorable August who must speak.
Okay.
But the Honorable Njaisa's mic is on, so it is disturbing. That is the sound that you get. Thank you.
I see.
Okay.
I see. Thank you, Chair. Honorable August, can you start from the beginning?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. With South Africa,
thank you very much for that opportunity. I've been waiting for the day when I was going to be called a speaker. Thank you very much. But I'm still the House Chair anyway.
Sorry, House Chair. With South African schools having reopened to a new normal yesterday, it is time to implement the 3 C's: common sense, creativity, and caution. We know enough about COVID to know that if we wear masks, practice social distancing, and regular wash our hands, we reduce our chances of becoming links in the transmission chain. That's the common sense part. We also know enough about children to know that naturally social beings they are. Schools are social environments, part learning from books and part learning from observing and interacting with peers in the playground. This is where creativity from educators and parents is crucial. The new normal requires new ways of learning and new ways of playing that engage young people and retain their attention. The need for caution cannot be overemphasized. There is still a whole lot more we don't know about COVID-19 than we do know. We don't ride bicycles with our eyes closed because we understand consequences could be very bleak. The science seems to be telling us that young people don't transmit the virus as easily as older people and generally don't suffer the worst of the symptoms. But there's a whole lot that remains unclear. By practicing common sense, creativity, and caution, we can minimize grief. Chairperson, the strategy of the phased reopening of schools, beginning with grade 7s and 12s in August, made sense. It enabled schools and school communities to set up practical processes and systems ahead of the mass return of learners. Many schools use this phase to develop innovative methods in the response to this new trying time, not only to keep the system of learning running, but also to make it interesting. The Good Party lauds the teaching profession for its willingness to undertake this new journey. We 100% support teachers' demand for the adequate PPEs and improved hygiene regimes at schools. To be expected to open up in the absence of PPEs and hygiene would be the opposite of cautious. It would be reckless. We have seen the fruits of recklessness in some overseas countries which prematurely lifted lockdowns where infections and body counts continued to mount. We must monitor the impact of reopening schools over the coming days and weeks, because much as we are all desperate for our children's education to resume, the health of the nation must come first. If we are able to keep abreast of transmissions and make quick decisions when local spikes are detected, we will minimize disruptions. Our educators and learners are going to be under intense pressure to get through their work, having lost more of the year. On top of this pile of pressure, educators will play a very important role in instilling knowledge about the pandemic that will inform behavior change for our generations to come. Let there be no room for complacency.
Thank you very much, Honourable Arthur.
We call on the whole of society to lend support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next member on the podium ritual is the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair, and thank you for the presentation by my colleagues. Allow me to start off by saying that when we quote words from our former icon President Madiba, we must be very mindful and careful what we say, because our comrade and former President Madiba had played a massive role in South Africa, particularly when it came to children. And I don't think the former president would have encouraged children going to the death trap in school when infections are running high. Clearly, I don't think he would have done that. But let me add, when we talk about the World Health Organization, and say World Health Organization report indicates that children are less infectious, if that's the term that they've been using. But let us not forget what the World Health Organization goes on to say. Promote and put in place respiratory and hand hygiene. Physical, and is that hand hygiene available in every school? Clearly it is not. Is it available in the taxis that they must go to school with? No, it's not. Physical distancing measures to be put in place. Can you take a 45 square meter classroom, put 45 children and tell them to socially distance themselves? It's not possible. Then you're talking about transport in the bus. I think what the department and the minister and the DGs must do, they must spend a day in public taxi, go to the school, start from the morning till the end and see exactly what a child goes through. That's when they're going to understand what a child goes through to get to that school. And they go on to say that even when the child is in class, the child, you need to ensure there's physical distancing. You need to ensure that children traveling in buses, vans and vehicles have windows open. These buckies that they travel in don't have windows at the back that they travel. But let me go on to say, Honourable House Chair, that they say 1 out of 7 children, I heard one of my colleagues, I think from the DA spoke, and rightfully so, that go hungry. Now, you're talking about ensuring that you have a strong immune system. Now you're sending children to school where over 16,000 educators have comorbidities. Remember, 97,000 children got tested positive in 2 weeks in the United States of America when they went back to school, which made 40% or 86 children had died. Now the question that we must ask ourselves, were we ready when we took in this phased-in approach? In fact, the phased-in approach from day one was a disaster. Let us be honest, because what we do in years, you cannot expect to achieve it in 2 months. And perhaps no fault of the minister herself. But remember, unless the measures were put in place and you could guarantee the safety of the children, there was no rush or hurry to go put the children back to school. We've said very clearly, let's wait till the peak is over. We've got another 2 weeks. The minister, Professor Karim, is talking about another wave expected by the 28th or around there, where he's expecting a massive increase in infection. We don't know what is really going to happen. They speak about low, particularly with the educated learners, or children. We are saying, and remember, we must get this very, very clear. It is not a case that children do not get infected easily. They even infect others easily.
Thank you, Honourable Imam.
Sorry, am I running out of time?
Thank you very much.
Okay, but anyway, the National Party expresses its disappointment at the way this entire thing was conducted and put the child's lives at risk. However,
thank you, Honourable Imam.
Going back to school at some stage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so we come out of that debate by the members of parliament relating to the reopening and the phasing in of more grades at schools. Of course, some members of parliament are for the reopening of schools, whereas some are against it, citing what they call the unreadiness of the Department of Basic Education. As it is now, we need to take you to Geneva in Switzerland, because the World Health Organization will today declare the African continent free of the wild